Hey, it's Big Game James McCarty, the sports director at Flag Family Media, here with Jace Denman. And with it being National Signing Day, we have a couple of the Dragon coaches and Coach Steve Laqua, Chris Needham coaches. This has got to be an exciting time of the year for you. And being able to get these young men signed, I have to imagine Coach Laqua is really, it's going to make you feel good after all the months of work you've put into it.
Absolutely. Recruiting is a long process, kind of a 13-month process and journey that we go through on this. And so excited today is the day we finally get to talk about everybody. Staff's put in a lot of hard work over this kind of recruiting season to be able to bring guys into the Dragon family and, start a new chapter for them and a new chapter for our program.
And for Coach Needham, of course, being the director of kind of all of the going through and doing all the recruiting, all those different types of things, how does it feel for you being able to execute and have everything go smoothly, kind of like it did for you guys this year?
It feels great. A lot of work goes into a full year of recruiting, where we have visits in the spring, camps in the summer, games in the fall, of course, where recruits are coming back, 1, 2, or 3 times. So it's a lot of effort from our coaching staff. It's a lot of planning, but it's great that the day's finally here.
And you're able to do a lot of creative things as well for that. I know at the beginning of the year you had told me we'll see you at some basketball games. We see you guys there periodically with recruits, different things of that sort. So when it comes to that aspect, how are you able to maximize your time with potential recruits or potential commitments while they're trying to go through that whole process to get to where they are today?
For sure. I think it's all about consistency, in recruiting. So it's, right now we're reaching out to this next class of, getting contact information and introducing ourselves. So after that, it's being consistent in those relationships. It's bringing them on visits to junior days where they get to learn about our culture, our program, the people in it, which is the most important part. And then we get to see them at camps and then game visits. So it's about consistency, building those relationships along the way. And I think just making sure that those relationships are with kids that match who we are, that they're part of the Dragon family because they know what they're going to get. So it's finally a great day to see those kids sign with the Dragons.
Well, before we get into talking about some of the specific recruits that we're finally able to now kind of discuss, when it comes to signing day, then Chris, this is a culmination of this draft class. But when does next year's draft class start? When do you start prepping for that? Does that start tomorrow?
It's already started. It's, I think going back, a few months, like we've had some juniors that we're, right now talking to that were at our camp last summer. So it really never ends. We're always looking at kind of the next wave of kids coming in. I know this spring we already have junior day visits like planned and set. So we'll have more families coming back and it's definitely an exciting time.
With recruiting in today's age, Coach, a lot of things have changed even in the last 2 or 3 years, let alone since you got here about a decade or so ago. With having the extra assistant coaches now, with being able to have those different guys to help recruiting, are you still able to go to schools, do things of that sort? Do most of the student athletes come in? How does that whole process work? And what has social media done for being able to find and recruit talent as well?
That was a loaded question, a lot of different parts there. I think just part of the piece is it's looking at relationships. It's about people. It's about who we are. And I think social media sometimes has maybe distorted what places really are like, right? Like nobody goes on social media and puts anything bad about themselves. It's kind of over the top good and maybe a sense of, a picture that's maybe not actually true. And so in recruiting, we're just trying to pull back the screen. Here's who we are. Here's the things we believe in. This is us at a core. No real smoke and mirrors, just real people doing real things with real values. And so I think that's been good for us to just, almost just take the anti-social media approach and just be what it is. Obviously, in a situation in Division II and in where finances are tough, fiscal responsibility is super important in recruiting, and so we've had to make use of technology, and so it's maybe FaceTime, it's maybe Zoom, it's trying to create every meaningful impact that we can on a connection, and so we found that the more recruits come to campus, they're around us, they're around our players, they see campus, they do a tour, they interact with people on campus, the dining services. The more times they do that, the more likely they are to not just become a Dragon, but the more likely they are to stick it out for the whole 4 to 5 years of their journey. And that's ultimately what it's about. Signing day is great today, but all it is the start of a journey to being a Dragon. And so that journey we want to end 4 to 5 years from now when they run across the field on senior day. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to get to, not just to sign and say, hey, we got this class. No, we signed this class and we're going to graduate this class and make them better men, better football players.
Now, when it comes to this process, then, and kind of going off of what James had asked, we've got these players that you're recruiting, players that you're looking at. When it comes to the whole process, I know we've been told, you guys have flat out told us this is a 13-month process to try and get to today. When it comes to that, how are you coming across and finding potential recruits? Is it are you guys out there on your own doing the recruiting, doing the scouting? Do you have other coaches that say, hey, this guy might be someone you guys want to look at? How does that go about of at least getting a student athlete that you're interested in recruiting and having them come on visits? For
sure. I think a lot of it starts with the high school coaches at these high schools. So I know, like in this class, there's 2 kids coming from Shanley. There's 2 kids coming from, DGF, Alexandria, and we have great relationships with those coaches. So it definitely helps having a great foundation there, where we already have, their teammates here as well. So we can ask them questions about, their teammates at those high schools where we kind of know what we're getting into a little bit. We know that they could be good fits because we have, some of their teammates here. Also camps, like seeing kids at camps definitely helps us in the recruiting process where we can, introduce ourselves, form relationships there, but also see how they move and can they play at this level. So those are probably like 2 huge things that go into maybe the process that kind of starts the recruiting process for us.
Now, Coach Laqua, to some extent there is a specific style, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the ball here at MSUM. So when you look at the student athletes that you want to come here, obviously there's equal parts. You got to be able to be a part of the Dragon way, part of the Dragon family, but yet they've also got to fit your guys' system. So is it something you're looking at the player more so on that fit? Because a lot of times it goes really underrated, having that fit with the player on the team. But, how much percentage-wise would you say, is it more fit within the organization, or is it more fit into the system of offense and defense you guys like to run?
Well, fit's always first, and culture fit is number one. If they're not going to be a guy that gets along in the locker room, it's not going to be a good match. Because again, like as mentioned earlier, we're trying to get from the beginning of the journey to the end, and the end means you've got to be able to fit into the locker room. You got to be able to understand the Dragon way. You've got to be coachable. You got to be a guy that's a team guy, and those are things that we talk about in recruiting straight up with them. Hey, we're not going to blow smoke at you and tell you you're going to be this or that. Like, you're going to get an opportunity, and you're going to get an opportunity to be part of a team, not the part, but part of a team. And guys have to be okay. Look at it as from our wide receiver core. The ball gets spread out to a lot of different people. And if you're not comfortable with that, then we're not the right fit for you. And some guys will tell us from the beginning they're looking to be the number one guy. And if they're not the guy, then they don't want to be here. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's okay, because if you're here, you're one of the guys, and we're going to do this as a whole, and we're going to have a balanced offense by spreading the ball to a bunch of different guys. And if you're not okay with that, it's not the right fit. And so we don't want to be 35 different things for 35 different players. We're one thing. This is who we are. And I think what we have is unique and special. It's finding the people that are looking for that and match that and want to be a part of it. And then I think it becomes a no-brainer kind of decision for them. And I think that's what we see today. We had 35 guys that felt like this was a no-brainer decision for them.
Is it stand out pretty easily to you guys as coaches of a player that maybe is physically talented, maybe fits the system, but is not – it doesn't have that mentality to be a part of the Dragon way? Is that something easy for you guys to spot early on in kind of the recruiting process?
For sure. I think a lot of it is shown through at camps. If they're all about, me or themselves, it kind of shows it in their actions. Or if you watch their highlight film on Huddle and, they're kind of off to the side and they're celebrating by themselves, okay, it screams ego. So you can kind of read between the lines on some kids. Part of it, too, is just building that relationship with them and really understanding, okay, is this kid a good fit for our culture? And sometimes it takes time for that to happen. You just don't know after one conversation. It's after meeting the family, meeting the kid, and really diving in deep to see if, okay, is this kid a good fit for Dragon football? So takes time. It's a process, and a lot of different angles that you have to look at to make sure this is the right fit.
So we are here in the Fargo-Moorhead metro area. We've got a Division I school across the river. You guys are Division II. On this same side, there was a Division III school. When it comes to recruiting for MSUM, and now granted there's different levels, we've just said Division I, Division II, Division III, and obviously there's other local schools. NSIC is a very tough conference in general, top to bottom. How is the competition among schools, among the different divisions of trying to get those players you're looking after? I mean, are you finding yourself recruiting against fellow conference schools? Are you finding yourself, competing against Division I schools that are looking for talent? I mean, how does that kind of, work at this level as far as the recruiting process against other schools?
Well, I think first off, what a great community to be in, right? It's a football community, all different levels for all different types of football players. And so I think, we found for the most part as we've gone through recruiting that we are competing a lot against the conference members, our regional conference foes primarily. But at the end of the day, I also feel like we're kind of just recruiting against everybody in the sense of here's who we are. And like I said, I do believe what we have is unique in the sense of how we do things and where we put our focus, not just offensively and defensively, but off the field and the leadership development, the different things we do to develop chemistry and build relationships and those things. And so we're really competing to say, can you see value in what we do here more than any other play? And not just about the football, but can you find the value within our football program that maybe doesn't have to do with scholarship, that maybe doesn't have to do with major community, wherever those things, and those are all important pieces. But that's the battle of how can we show the value that we have here that's beyond maybe surface level of viewing.
Anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, so really, too, like the greater the talent in the Fargo metro area, the more it helps the Dragons. And we could see that in this year where there's a ton of potential and great athletes in the metro area. And it starts with a lot of their high school coaches, where many of the programs are successful, are great people like leading those programs, and they very much support football. So the more talent there is in the metro, the more it helps our program, and it's good to see that in this class.
Trying to piggyback a bit off that last one and saying local talent, things of that sort. On the meter, how important is that to be able to retain local talent? Because out of these 35 guys, 7 of which have come from the Fargo-Moorhead Metro. We know that there are some of the Grand Forks young men. There are some of those Bismarck, Mandans, your Detroit Lakes, Alexandrias, and things of that sorts and beyond. But to be able to get a core and about 20% of that class from within, really about 20 miles of campus, how huge is that for the Dragon family?
Oh, it's big because retention is important. The closer people are to home, probably the better chance you have at retention and success. And I think you're playing for something bigger than yourself. You come here, you grew up in this community, you know what Dragon football means to the community. You want to represent yourself well, your high school well, this program, this community. You come here and you're kind of put in the space of a natural leader because you are carrying your community, so to say. And I think, and then it builds on top of each other. And so you're like, okay, well, who's maybe a junior at Fargo South or Fargo Shanley or Fargo North? It's like, you know what, I want to be the next guy that joins that program and continues to lift it and carry it. And we've seen that. And I think there's a lot of pride, not just on all our team guys, but the Metro guys in particular, because this is home. They did grow up with it and they want to see the hometown team successful.
Well, and I know, Chris, obviously you're a Shanley graduate, coach. You coached Shanley for a while. So, Chris, it's obviously there's a lot of talent, and James and I covering the metro area athletes, there's a ton of talent to be kind of mined from this area. So, you can give your thoughts on how important it is to keep the local talent coming over here to Moorhead.
Yeah, it's extremely important. I know you mentioned Shanley. I'm a Shanley alum, so having 2 kids come from that school where I played at, and a lot of those coaches were my high school coaches. So it's really cool to see. And like I was saying earlier, there's tons of talent in Fargo-Moorhead. And at the same time, only so many kids can play college football. So for kids to choose MSUM for the right reasons, for the people, for the culture, it's great to see, because that these kids that we've recruited are coming from great families, and they'll make a great impact on our program.
I know last year we've seen James and I first year covering the team. We saw Madden Thorson from, I believe, Sawyer, North Dakota. Yep. We've Harvey. We've got one from Sawyer. You've got some really dynamic wide receivers from small town North Dakota. So has that been a focal point of recruiting at MSUM, trying to find those small town guys that maybe in a sense get overlooked by bigger schools, but you know that they can play at this level and obviously make an impact? For
sure. And like a lot of those, small town guys, they might not even be playing wide receiver in high school. Maybe they're playing quarterback because they're the best athlete on their team. The coach wants the ball in their hands. So a lot of these guys, the Madden Thorson, Gage Florence, they come from smaller towns, but it doesn't mean they can't play at a high level. And you just have to find them. It takes communication with their coaches. Getting them to camp is definitely key. And then, making sure they're the right character fit. Yeah. But I'm glad they're on our team. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, Coach, just thank you for coming to your time. We appreciate it. We don't want to hold you guys up too long. I know you have recruiting to go do for the 2025 class already. So, thank you to both of you guys, and we're looking forward to a great season. Only about 6 months away. Not that I'm counting down or anything from the opener.